Alright, so today we're going to be talking about magical statements of intent, also known as how to not get screwed by a genie. Let's get into it. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored once again by Patreon. Link in the description down below, and if you're watching this over on Patreon, hello, thank you for your support. If you're not watching this on Patreon, link is down in the description. We now have a massive backlog of content if you are not aware. If you want to be part of the good thing we got going on down over at the Patreon link in the description. Let's get into the actual video now, shall we? So what is a statement of intent? A statement of intent, more or less, is a sentence-long description of what you are trying to manifest or what you are trying to magically achieve. Now, the reason why we make a statement of intent is quite simple. The reason for making a statement of intent is so that you have a clear and concise sentence-long description of what you are trying to manifest and what you are trying to achieve. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you don't clearly know what you're trying to manifest, how is it supposed to manifest clearly? So we're going to go through some examples. That being said, before we do anything, we're going to go through some general rules for good statement of intent writing. So let's get into it. First general rule. These should be short, sweet, and to the point. You want to make it so you don't have any fluff in your statements of intent, and if something is important, it needs to be there. Words have meaning, and if your words are there for no reason, they should not be there. Something that breaks this is don't add any ums to your statements of intent. You shouldn't be adding like, I want, and you write that out. Don't write that. That's not what you need. Anything like that. So if what you need to know is if what you're doing works and you are doing a manifestation type practice and you're trying to manifest something specific and you put in a word that you don't actually want, or God forbid you don't know the meaning of, it will manifest the exact way that you specify. Which leads us to number 2, which is you should only be using positive language. Now, the reason why you want to use positive language, and I have what that means here, no nots, no don'ts, doesn'ts, anything with an N apostrophe T in English, or something similar to that. Don't invert things. You want very clear and concise language, and not using negatives means that you have to use specific positive language and you are specifically targeting what you are trying to manifest. Rule number 3, there should always be a writer to bind actions not wanted. Now, the reason why this rule is here is quite simple, because this is over the course of hundreds and thousands of years, people found out that if you're casting for mundane material things, sometimes those things go through the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance in some cases was actually that, those people end up getting hurt. People ended up getting hurt as a result of magic. People started putting this rider. The incidence of people getting hurt disappeared, so that is why that is a rule. Now, number 4, you're going to want to double check every major word in your statement of intent. This one is pretty simple. You're just going to want to Google and make sure you actually know the definition of the word you're putting in, and it can't backfire in the most bizarre way possible. Should go without saying. That being said, some people do weird things when they get into magic, and I'm just trying to dot all my I's and cross all my T's. Now, I have some examples, but I want to just say 2 phrases that you will see in all the examples. First one, it is my will. This is just a simple, we're going to be starting to address what the statement of intent is. The it is my will has to do with the concept of the will, which is not going to be a thing I'm talking about in this video. We're just talking about statements of intent. And the other one is with no harm done. This is the simple rider binding people from harm. This is the simple rider binding things from causing any issues and unsightly harm to things, people, or otherwise. Now, let's get into the examples. First example, it is my will that I get an extra $50 unexpectedly with no harm done. that I can spend however I want. This one is simple, concise, and it binds not only harming other people, but it binds you from not being able to actually spend the money on whatever you want, which is a possibility. When I was initially writing this example, I ended up writing something to the effect of, it is my will that somebody unexpectedly gives me an extra $50. Now, if that's the case, then sometimes that might just be wrong change. You have to give them the change back, something like that. Example number 2. It is my will that I own a gaming PC that can play the most demanding games on the highest settings with no harm done. This one is actually pretty good. This one, really, it might seem like it's vague, but the reason why it's fine is because even though it is kind of vague about what the most demanding games are, you're leaving that up to the divine to figure out, and that's generally a fine thing to do. Now, here are some examples of really bad statements of intent. First one, it is my will that I get a lot of money really fast. Okay, so the reason why this one is bad is because you, 1, don't specify the amount of money you want, 2, you just say really fast, and 3, you don't bind the action not wanted, which in the case of money spells is likely to get somebody hurt. So yeah, no, F's across the board here. It is my will that I lose weight fast with no harm done. All you need to do in order for this to actually be functional is lose not even half a pound, and technically this spell has manifested if you do it fast. Whatever fast means. F. Now, as you can probably tell, it's a little bit easier to write a bad statement of intent than it is to write a good statement of intent. So, how can we write better statements of intent? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to clearly make sure we know what we're casting for. And the second thing we need to do is we need to double check to make sure that what we're actually casting for and what we're actually trying to manifest is actually, not going to just be like some mild inconvenience to us and is actually going to be the thing we want. 90% of issues with Magick are caused due to bad statements of intent. You can prevent 100% of these bad situations if you do the right things. Simply reading over your statement of intent and thinking, what is the worst way this could manifest, is the simplest way of just checking to make sure that your statement of intent isn't going to be a problem. There are 3 stages of this. The first stage, you're going to want to make sure that the statement of intent is actually functioning the way you want it to, and you want to make sure that just on a simple read that yes, it would manifest the thing that you're trying to manifest in the first place. The second thing you're going to want to do is after you've checked and you've made sure that yes, it is going to manifest the thing you're wanting it to manifest, you want to make sure that it won't come with any caveats. Now, I mentioned in that first example that originally I wrote that somebody hands me an extra $50. Well, they can hand you that on accident when giving wrong change if they're a real fuck up. And in the example that I used, your buddy could give you $50 to go pay for stuff, and you actually just have to go do that. Like, that's not your money, that's just your buddy's money that he's giving you, and you get an extra $50 to buy whatever it is your buddy's trying to get you to buy. So, again, in order to try to get rid of some of these issues, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure that we are specifically and concisely making sure that what our statements of intent read is that they're going to read like, yes, we are actually going to be manifesting the thing we want with no issues and in what way we intend. It should be noted that statements of intent are kind of similar but different to spirit commands where you're actually giving the command to a spirit. Statements of intent are things for like candle spells and sigils, that kind of thing. Probably should have started with that, but yeah, here we are at the end of the video and I'm just talking about that. Anyways, it's important to note that when you're dealing with a spirit, sometimes a spirit will ask you for clarifications depending on what you're casting for. Now, sometimes it's like, can I do this? And sometimes when you're in an evocation setting, you might say, no, yes, or some in between, depending on what the spirit is asking. Typically, if a spirit like a demonic spirit is going to be asking you, can I do this bad thing? Usually the answer is going to be no. That being said, that's really all I wanted to cover on basics of statements of intent. Hopefully now you guys know how to write them better, and that's all I've got to say. So, I have been Dave, the Amateur Magus. Hope you're having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy.